Hello everybody, this is Katje. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This evening I wanted to make a video and I wanted to dress sharp because I wanted to think sharp and deal with a very important question that arises in connection with Nietzsche's philosophy. So I'm kind of wearing this sort of sexy, new wave, nerdy girl outfit. I thought that would be fitting for tonight's theme. So let me just model that for you briefly. I'm also wearing my fishnet stockings with these strapped stiletto high heels. I think that's a nice combination. I've worn that before, but I think tonight I wanted to mix it up a little bit with this really cute floral print top. So that's the look. And I hope everybody's had a good week. I hope everybody had a good weekend. And so what I'm going to do tonight in my video is, what I want to do is basically point out an ambiguity in some of the things that Nietzsche says about morality in his critique of moral notions like good and evil, right and wrong, virtue and duty, all of those things, rights. I want to point to an ambiguity in that, and then I want to say how I think Nietzsche should resolve the ambiguity, what would be the best way forward for him there. And then I think that sets up a problem that I want to talk about a little bit more in the next few videos that I make. So this is just Katje rattling on a little bit about some philosophical issues that she's been thinking about lately, but I hope that you will find it interesting. I've also been looking at some of cross-dresser videos recently from people to whom I subscribe. I've been enjoying those very much, so thank you for sharing those. But let me begin with this ambiguity that I think you can find in Nietzsche. So what is the ambiguity? Well, it has to do with Nietzsche's critique, as I said, of morality. And sometimes the critique comes in a stronger form and it comes in a weaker form. So in the weaker form, it sounds like sometimes Nietzsche is not rejecting all of morality. He's simply rejecting a certain kind of morality, which he calls slave morality. So these are things like altruism that teaches us to do good to benefit other people, not out of selfishness, but to benefit other people. It teaches things like the common good. However that's understood, that morality really should be serving the common good. Nietzsche despises that kind of morality. He calls it slave morality. And to make a long story short, he thinks that this is basically a way of tricking stronger people out of their strength and subordinating them to weaker people or making them mediocre, turning them into part of the herd, he calls it. So in this weaker version, a critique of morality that Nietzsche is developing and that he suggests sometimes is the critique is that, well, what we should reject is not all of morality, but only slave morality, only the common herd morality. We should reject that, and the Übermensch, or the Superman, should then develop his own morality that allows him to realize his perfection. He should choose his moral values. He should be the author of his own morality. That's the morality of Herrschaft, or domination in German, dominance, for the stronger people. So it would be a kind of perfectionism where the individual Übermensch is choosing his own moral values, not the values of the herd. So that's the weaker critique, but the weaker version of it. But there's a stronger version that Nietzsche suggests, and I could point to particular passages, but I won't do that this evening because I can make that clear to somebody if they'd like to hear it. But the point is, sometimes Nietzsche doesn't just reject slave morality. He thinks the whole idea of morality itself is a confusion or something arbitrary or something that we should reject. And so he really is calling for a kind of perfectionism that sets aside, for example, one of his works is called Beyond Good and Evil, Jenseits von Gut und Böse in German. And so this is the idea that we really need to get beyond all morality, not just the slave morality of the common good, but also some kind of higher morality where we're still thinking in terms of good versus bad, or duties, or right and wrong, but only insofar as those things have been determined by the Übermensch to serve his own need for perfection, his own search or quest for perfection. So that's the ambiguity. Now, what do I think? How do I think Nietzsche should come down? Where should he come down? Should he settle for the weaker critique or for the stronger one? Well, I actually think that Nietzsche would be in a better position philosophically to reject all morality and to exclude moral notions entirely from his quest for perfection. Now that leaves open the question, well, what is this quest for perfection and how do we attain it? I want to come back to that at the very end of tonight's video, but let me give you my reason for thinking why Nietzsche should reject all morality, not just slave morality, but morality simpliciter. All of it's got to go. And that has to do with some of these ideas that I've discussed before in connection with Lisa Tessman's work. That has to do with moral dilemmas and situations where we either actually will or it's conceivable that we will find ourselves in a situation during the course of our lives where we are morally accountable to do certain things that we can't do. So we may find one or more moral values that we are responsible for following, but we can't fulfill them. We cannot fulfill all of our moral obligations, and so we're stuck. Now, it seems to me what's interesting here, and I'm going to give some very specific examples in just a minute, but if that's the case, if that's somehow, and I think Tessman is right about this, if that's somehow woven into the moral notions of good and evil, right and wrong, and so forth, then it doesn't really matter what morality we choose, whether it's the slave morality of good and evil or the Übermensch's morality where he chooses his own moral values. The same kind of moral dilemmas could arise for the morality of the Übermensch as they could in the slave morality. Now let me give you some examples. Let's think about an Übermensch. Let's think about Superman. So suppose that Superman decides to go along with Nietzsche's weaker critique, and so he wants to say, well look, I'm not going to be part of slave morality, I'm going to choose my own moral values. So I'm not going to give up on the notion of morality entirely, I just want to make sure that whatever morality I adhere to is one that I've chosen, that I've created, that's going to be solely up to me. I'm not going to take those values over from a culture or a society or a herd. I'm going to select them myself. So suppose that Superman says, well look, I'm going to be the perfect superhero. And in particular, all the people about whom I deeply care, like Lois Lane and Lana Lang and Jimmy Olsen and all these people, I am going to be the perfect superhero and I am going to protect them. So for me, what is good is to protect them before everybody else. That's going to be my choice. And that moral value has value for me because I've chosen it. That is my choice, not because I've inherited it, not because it's been passed on to me, but because I have freely and deliberately chosen it. Now, obviously, we can imagine situations where Superman either actually does or certainly conceivably could find himself in a moral dilemma where he cannot fulfill his moral obligations like that he's chosen. So imagine a case where Superman is in the middle of the United States, and at one end you have Lois Lane, who is about to fall off a building, and at the other end you have Lana Lang, who's about to fall off a cliff, and in like 5 seconds, and so both of them are going to fall in 5 seconds, and Superman only has time to save one of them. Now remember, his moral commitment is to become the perfect superhero, which means saving and protecting all of his friends, his closest friends, including Lois Lane and Lana Lang, from any kind of harm. He's going to be the perfect superhero. But since in the situation that I've described, he only has time to get to one of them, he can't save them both, despite his super strength, he can only get to one, so whichever one he decides to save, the other one's going to die, and so he cannot fulfill jointly his moral obligation to save Lana Lang and Lois Lane. He cannot fulfill perfectly the moral values that he as an Übermensch has chosen for himself. And it doesn't even have to be one or more. Suppose that for whatever reason, Lois Lane is at some remove from Superman and she's about to succumb to some kind of horrible attack, or she's about to fall off a cliff herself, and he can't get there in time no matter how hard he tries. He will not be able to reach her. So even if there's nobody else in the picture, we can imagine other situations where Superman as an Übermensch is not capable of satisfying or fulfilling a moral obligation that he has freely undertaken as an Übermensch. So the fact that he's chosen his morality does not get him or anybody else out of the kind of moral dilemmas that Tessman describes in her book, which are things that either we could actually find, and maybe many of us have found ourselves in situations like that, not exactly like Superman, but other cases like the ones I've described before, or certainly we conceivably could, and if somehow during the course of our lives we manage to avoid that, that's simply a stroke of good luck. It's not something that we've done. It's just a matter of our good fortunes. It's a matter of moral luck, not a matter of our deliberate being good. So the problem here, it seems to me, with the weaker critique is that even if Nietzsche opts to criticize just slave morality, not the morality of the Übermensch, that does not avoid the kind of problem that Tessman in her work describes, and that I've described in previous videos. It still does not avoid the risk that an Übermensch, even an Übermensch who's chosen his own moral values, could be in situations where he's unable to fulfill them. And so he cannot attain perfection despite the fact that he's chosen his own moral values. So in that case, it would be better, philosophically, I believe, it would be better for Nietzsche to say, well, whatever the quest for perfection is, it has to circumvent morality entirely. It has to go beyond good and evil, not just good and evil as is understood in slave moralities, but also good and evil as it's understood by the Übermensch who tries to choose his own values. All of that needs to fall by the wayside in order to attain the kind of perfection that Nietzsche thinks is crucial to becoming an Übermensch and to remaining an Übermensch. And so that's what I want to leave it, where I want to leave it tonight. The question is, and that's what I really want to say, I guess, is the question that I would like to pose this evening and take up later, in a later video, is, well, what is perfection for Nietzsche then? If it doesn't have anything to do with morality whatsoever, what is perfection? How do we know that we have it? What would be a test? What kind of philosophical account can be given of that in terms that Nietzsche himself describes throughout his philosophical career? So that's what I want to talk about in a later video. That's going to have to do with Nietzsche's teachings about the eternal return of the same and also the will to power. But I don't want to get into that this evening. I just wanted to say something about this ambiguity and set up a question that I hope to answer in the future. So that's all that I wanted to say, and thank you for joining me. I hope again that everybody's having a good summer, and I also hope that everybody is having an enjoyable transition. We're beginning to change to fall. I wish everybody a peaceful, a restful, and a relaxing and a safe night. As always, please be good to each other. Please take care of each other. I really appreciate your watching my videos, and as I said, I'm enjoying some of your videos quite a bit. So until next time, this is Katje saying good night and wishing everybody sweet dreams. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.